Good evening, my friends. Tonight is a very special night. Before I talk to you guys about the topic at hand here, I want to make a l'chaim in honor of the yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing, excuse me, of a great man. He was known as you could call him what was the name that they used? The moniker? The defense attorney of the Jewish people. He is otherwise known as the Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev. And tonight is his what they call yortzeit, or the anniversary of his passing. They say that the passing of a tzaddik is very spiritual. The day of the passing of a tzaddik has a very special power. And I'll tell you guys something. I see a lot of you guys are joining. My father's family hails from Berdichev. My grandfather was born there, his father. So I have a very close connection, seeing as how I don't really have what they call a Mesorah, a tradition in my family necessarily, but if I wanted to have one, it would be from the place called Berdichev, per my father's side of the family. So, in honor of that, I'd like to make a l'chaim, having some the rest of the Cabernet Franc that I opened the other night from Golan Heights. Chaim l'chaim to my friends in Golan Heights and everybody else. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam be'er peragav. So, speaking of defense attorneys for the Jewish people, I'll tell you guys something in light of what is currently happening in the Jewish nation. I guess you can say, when I say the Jewish nation, I don't mean just in Israel itself. I mean just around the Jewish world and by extension the world. The Jewish people for sure need a defense attorney at the moment. Because tonight I want to talk to you guys about something that I'm seeing happening, and it's happening, I would say, both in the United States and here in Israel, and it's basically this kind of phenomenon, and it comes around in the Jewish world. You know, we see it like kind of in what's called cycles and revolutions, and it comes around every so often where there are, let's say, two groups, actually in this case even three different groups of Jewish people, and what they do is one group basically starts either telling the other group or speaking ill of the other group. And when you call them out on it, well, they say, listen, I mean, we're not like those guys. But at the same time, they'll say, well, those guys are giving the rest of us a bad name as Jews. What am I talking about? Well, if you guys look at what's happening today in New York, and this is where I wanted to tell you guys the topic of what I'm talking about today. The topic is called The Merchant of Brooklyn. If you guys ever seen, or if you read the book or the play called The Merchant of Venice, or if you've ever seen the movie with Al Pacino, The Merchant of Venice, this is essentially what is happening now in Brooklyn. Not only in Brooklyn, but in Israel as well. But Brooklyn is really the epicenter of it. What's happening? What's happening is the authorities are coming, particularly in New York, Mayor de Blasio and also Governor Cuomo, and they're coming and they're saying, we have evidence that there is an uptick among the Jewish community, specifically the Orthodox, the Hasidic Jewish community, not the modern Orthodox, but the Hasidic Jewish community, that there's an uptick in corona cases, even though they're coming, and they're not really presenting any evidence. They're just saying there's an uptick. And so therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to impose a lockdown. And not only that, what they're doing is they're going on Twitter, they're going in the public sphere, and they're using certain language where if it was any other community, say the Hispanic community, African American, Asian, whoever, they would never use such language. And if they did use such language, they'd be immediately run out of office. Excuse me, guys. Just our neighbors here are just, I don't know who does more damage, the Jewish people to themselves, or our cousins over here. But anyway, excuse me. So it's getting chilly. It's like sweater weather here in Jerusalem already, at least at night. So, because we're up in the mountains, or this is kind of a mountainous area. So, yeah. So basically, they're coming and they're accusing the community of causing or furthering an outbreak. They're singling out the community. Mind you, they didn't come after people who were protesting and rioting and basically bunching up in crowds. Some of them not wearing masks. They didn't single them out. Not only that, I think de Blasio, he went to Trump Tower and he started painting murals on the ground, or painting, I don't know, some messages on the ground, which then got erased, and then they painted it again. So basically, the Jewish people, or specifically the Hasidic Jewish community, is being singled out for perceived, certain behavior with regards to coronavirus. So now, what's happening? What do I notice happening on social media, primarily, and also just from people writing articles about this? There's a group of people, a very specific, I would call, niche of people, or a specific profile of people who are coming out and they're saying, this is, horrible. These people are giving us a bad name. These people are going to cause us to be persecuted. These people are, bringing anti-Semitism on us. Blah, 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 blah. And I'll tell you guys something. It's happening not only in New York, it's happening also here in Israel. It's really basically the same thing. To where you have people in certain neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and also next to Tel Aviv, in places like Bnei Brak. And then you have people who are protesting against Bibi, the government, whoever, who are basically doing the same thing, if not worse. They are not being called out on this. So now, what I'm noticing is, I'll tell you guys something. It's one thing if you have, let's say, secular Jews coming out. It's like a secular versus religious thing. That's one thing. That's something that's typical. And there goes our friend, who's also upset about this whole thing. I'll tell you guys something, just pause for a second. I live in a very kind of like suburban-esque neighborhood, but for a suburban-esque neighborhood, for a quiet, more or less neighborhood, there is so much noise here. You have like our cousins over here, and they all like to work on their cars and on their motorcycles, and they're just loud, and they just like abnormally loud, and they just pass by this quiet street, and it's just a car, it sounds like it's like a tiny car, just sounds like a Mack truck. Something is exploding, I'm telling you. I remember one time one of these cars, it rode over a basketball. I thought a bomb went off. Some little kid, his basketball exploded. Anyway, and you have the dogs, crazy. So, Baruch Hashem, I'm here in Israel, under the stars. Anyway, so what I'm noticing, my friends, it's not something that the left wing in either country are doing. The left-wing Jews in America, left-wing Jews in necessarily, or secular, right? There is this strange demographic of people. They are Torah observant Jews who are, I guess you can call them modern Orthodox, people who grew up Orthodox, who still maybe are, or who are what you would call chilled out, or some people what you would call, off the derech, who come out, and what it seems like to me is that they exhibit such shame. They're so ashamed of their Jewish brothers and sisters, and what they're doing is they're coming and they're stepping on these people's heads while they're drowning. And you may say to me, well, Tzvi, how is this any different from when Candace Owens comes and, tells her community to be better? I'll tell you guys how it's different. Because the Hasidic community, the African American community has certain systemic issues within it, right? These people are coming and saying, well, we need to fix those issues, and we have to stop being victims. The slavery is over for the past 250 years. We have to stop being victims. Okay, we have the civil rights movement, whatever it is, we won. More or less, we got what we wanted in the 60s, 70s, even 80s. Let's move forward, right? In this particular case, you have a community, the Orthodox community, let's say in New York, let's just give the primary example. If you go to these neighborhoods, most of the people are actually complying. Most of the people are wearing masks. On top of that, you have a gentleman by the name of Heshi Tischler. He is I guess a grassroots kind of guerrilla journalist. I think he lives in Borough Park, but a lot of his work is in primarily, in Brooklyn and in Flatbush, Williamsburg, Borough Park. What does he do? He goes to Maimonides Hospital, where most of these people are taken, right? Most people are taken if they have COVID or any other issues, and he just stands out there and he follows, the Hatzalah, the private ambulances, the Hasidic ambulance, and he basically has been saying that most of the people coming in to the hospital are not coming in with COVID. He goes, in fact, some days you don't even have any people coming in with COVID. On top of that, he says, this is something completely insane, my friends. Certain Hatzalah people are being offered $1,500 per person, per patient, to write falsely, fraudulently, that the person has COVID when a person actually did not have COVID. How do we know this? Because he actually followed one of these Hatzalah guys. He was saying this, and the Hatzalah guy turned his face, didn't want to be shown. And it happened on numerous occasions. Unfortunately, this person that I just told you guys about, the journalist, he's a little bit of a rabble-rouser, so what did he do? He organized, the protests, and recently, I think it was yesterday, he was arrested, and of course we have this whole thing in the media, and everything's taken out of context, and you guys know where these things go, okay? And then what happens? The people that I just mentioned, these frum people, or frum people who are ashamed of their own community, usually they tend to be left-wing. They come out and they say, we have to be better, and we have to this, we have to that, and this is bringing shame, and this is going to bring anti-Semitism in our community. My friends, this is a certain, I'll tell you something, this is I hate to use the word infestation, but it's an infestation, it's a spiritual and psychological infestation in our community that is the left-wing frum person. And I just don't understand. I really, really fail to understand. And my friends, I'll tell you guys something once more. It extends to other things. What I don't understand is, I'll give you an example. And I guess this is something I never asked these people, but if you come up to them, you talk to them, a lot of them have relatives who live, who are my neighbors, right? A lot of these people, let's say, who live in Brooklyn or wherever it is they live, Upper West Side or Washington Heights, they have relatives who live in Judea and Samaria. And I always want to come up to them and I want to ask them a question. You guys are going to vote for a party that if it was up to that party, your relatives would be kicked out of their house. Your relatives in Bat Ayin, in Efrat, even in Efrat, in Beit El, in Shiloh, in wherever it is that they live in what's called the West Bank, your relatives, your cousin, your uncle, your brother, your sister would be kicked out of their home if the people that you vote for, namely the Democratic Party in America, would have their way, whether it's in Congress or it's in the executive branch. So I don't understand, and this mindset, right, of people who claim to be following Torah, or people who claim to be attached to the Torah or to the land of Israel, or even to say that they love Israel, I just don't understand there's a disconnect for me, my friends. And it also extends to the way that they treat their fellow frum Jews, right? To the point where they're coming and they're saying, well, no, it's not de Blasio, who's the anti-Semite piece of you-know-what. It's not him, despite the fact that he doesn't single out, there's parties, hip-hop parties, people without masks. There are parties in the Hispanic community, people without masks. There are parties probably in Asian, all these private parties, people's houses, people bunched up like this. No one's coming out at these communities. No one's coming out at all these rallies and all these protests on the riots, okay, without the masks. No one's coming out to single those people out. What they are coming out is to single out the Jew, or the profile of the Jew that was first singled out back in Germany, back in Poland. It's the same story. And I'll tell you guys something. I was talking to some relatives today, and they told me, yeah, they're on these groups of Russian-speaking Jews, and they say, yeah, De Blasio and Cuomo, they don't come after us. They come after, we're not those types of Jews. They come after those Hasidic people. And those Hasids, they hate us anyway. They don't think we're real Jews. And I told my relative, I said, does this sound familiar to you? Does this sound like something we heard before? Cough, 1939, cough, Germany, Poland. Yeah, it's those types of Jews, the Hasids. We're the, we're the cultured, assimilated, we're already like, German / or in this case, American Jew. We've integrated, we've assimilated. They're not going to come after us, right? They're not going to come after us. It's those Hasids in Buda Park and Muncie and Wählensberg, right? My friends, I mean, honestly, it's just, you know what I call this? As a person who was a former DJ, I'm a DJ. Once a DJ, always a DJ. This is a broken record on a broken turntable, with on a broken mixer, with a messed up needle, right? But you know what? The speakers are hi-fi, and you can hear everything loud and clear. Okay, all this broken sound from the broken record. Okay, nothing changed. 1939, 18 something, 17 something, 16 something, 15 something. My friends, you can go all the way back to the Merchant of Venice, to the Shylock, and absolutely nothing changed. We are now in the era of the Merchant of Brooklyn. We are going to get blamed for this again. We're going to get blamed. But the problem is, the only difference is this time, we are going to be the cause of our own downfall, because we have no unity, and we like attack each other. And for me, the strangest thing is that these are the people that are attacking Torah Jews are other supposedly Torah Jews, or at least people who grew up in a certain way. And we have to be better, and we're ashamed. It's such a, there's nothing worse. Honestly, I'll tell you guys something. I was telling my friend this morning. I said, you know what's worse than a lefty Jew? Is a frum lefty Jew. Is a lefty Jew who's coming in the name of the Torah. That is like, I don't know. Erev Rav is not even. It's like an insult to Erev Rav to call these people Erev Rav. You know what I'm saying? It's like the biggest, I don't know, understatement you could ever give. So, my friends, I mean, we're three weeks out of an election, and I'm just watching everything that's happening, and I mean, apart from being interesting, it's just a little scary. And I'll tell you guys something. Depending on how things go here with the lockdown and what happens with just the opening of the airport and just the airlines and all that stuff, I'm trying to come visit my family, November, December, what have you. It may not look it, but I'm about to turn 40. Bezrat Hashem, Bli Ayin Hara, Bli Neder, Bli Ayin Hara. May not look it. You guys may not believe me, but I always say I look 30. I have the mind of a 13-year-old, but that's another conversation. But I don't know, guys. I'm just looking at what's going on, particularly in the frum community. Again, I'm not really. I'm not really moved by the, let's say in Israel, the left wing and secular community or whatever it is. It's a whole thing of like, okay, people don't know any better. The media stirs up, likes to stir up discord. They like to bash from people. It is what it is. This is what it is. This is how it's gonna be. This is how it's always been. You can't be surprised. You can't ask for anything. But when you're talking about the Froome community, particularly in New York, you go to a place like Upper West Side, Washington Heights, you know, I don't want to say any other communities because I don't want to vilify, again, I don't want to speak Lashon Hara or vilify the entirety of certain communities, but it's just, as a person, I didn't grow up religious. I grew up secular or traditional, and I came to this as all this as an adult. I took on the Torah as an adult, Torah observance. Like I always tell my friends, I don't have to be here. I'm here because I want to be here. And I really don't have to be here, especially culturally speaking. What I've witnessed, forget about even the stuff I just mentioned. I really, really don't need to be here at all, and sometimes I wish I wasn't. By here I mean the Frum community, whether you're talking about Israel or America or wherever, right? It's like what is it? A square peg in a round hole. And but my friends, just what I've seen from some people in the, I guess, Torah observant community, how they rail into their brethren, and how they just are so quick to jump, no matter what it is. If it's Corona, if it's this, if it's I don't know, the issue of, we were talking about the issue of modesty, or I don't know, women's, whatever you want to talk about. It's not only just Corona. It was even like this before Corona. They just rail into them. They just go into them, and it's incredible how vitriolic certain people in the Frum community could be to their brethren in the Hasidic community. And I'll tell you guys something. It does go both ways, because you have rabbis coming out and saying, the reason X, Y, and Z happens is because these people aren't keeping this. That's also not good. My friend is writing, blessings from Rock of Gibraltar. I have a friend from Gibraltar. Yeah, there's actually an interesting, very interesting Jewish community. Most of them are actually from in Gibraltar. It's very interesting. I don't even know how they got there. Well, I kind of know how they got there, but it's very interesting. I actually met a gentleman who gave me a ride from, I think it was Elon Moreh. He gave me a ride from Elon Moreh to Karni Shomron, or to Ravava, basically in the Shomron, from one place to Shomron, from East Shomron, or Northeast to West Shomron. And he actually was from Gibraltar, and I heard his accent. He had a British accent. I said, "Oh, you're from England?" He's like, "No, Gibraltar." I'm like, "What the heck? What the hell is Gibraltar?" I mean, I know what Gibraltar is. I didn't, like, there's Jews in Gibraltar. He's like, "Yeah, but whatever." We made Aliyah. I'm like, so weird. There's a good couple thousand Jews in Gibraltar. So anyway, my friends, yeah, I just wanted to speak about this issue, and it's so sad. And what's happening in New York is really, really sad. And I think that, and I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, I think that usually in these situations, Hashem unfortunately sends us reminders of why and how we need to have unity. And I think once this whole Corona thing wraps up, which will probably be after this winter, or maybe even towards the end of the winter, let's say January, February, I'm really concerned for the Jews of America, in particular Jews of New York, but also Jews all over the States, and in particular Orthodox Jews. And I'll tell you, and usually when these things happen, people unite, but I think unfortunately in this case it'll be a thing where, like, the same people that are deriding their brothers and sisters, and they're singling them out, and they're saying they're the cause of COVID spread and blah 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 blah, they're going to be the ones that are going to be saying, "We told you, you did this, it's your fault, blah 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 blah." And I'll tell you guys something, the more they do it, the more our enemies are going to mobilize against us. And I think at some point those Jews are going to realize, you know what, it's better to have unity. And they'll understand that, it's not, first of all, these people for the most part are following the rules, and they'll understand that there are other people out there who are also not following the rules, and that their brethren were actually singled out by one of the most heinous and downright anti-Semitic politicians who ever walked the earth of America, namely de Blasio, aka Wilhelm, okay? And they're going to realize that. By hook or by crook, they're going to realize that. It's going to be kind of a kick in the skull. Hopefully they won't get too much of a kick in the skull before that happens. But I'm very concerned, my friends, as I sit here on my semi-dismantled sukkah here under the stars in Jerusalem. And we'll see what happens. A lot of things are coming up our way, including, here in Israel, they have to formulate a budget by December, and then we have a prime minister who's going to be in court. We have the election in America. Today we had they had the confirmation hearing for this lady for the Supreme Court in the States. I'll tell you guys something. So many things hang in the balance, and I can only imagine what was going on if you're on that level, so to speak, spiritually. What was going on in what's called the Beit Din Shel Mala during Rosh Hashanah and during the 10 days of Yamim Noraim, 10 days of repentance, and then during Yom Kippur, and even during Sukkot and during Simchat Torah and during Rosh Hashanah Rabbah, where they actually say the final sealing. Sealing, not S-C-E-I, but seal, S-E-A-L-I-N-G. So at Hashem, we got a good judgment and a good seal, S-E-A-L-I-N-G. And I hope that going forward, all the Jews will be safe, not just from COVID, but also, just realize that it's all about unity at the end of the day, and what we're engaging in, this whole froom on froom, just total, I would say, hatred and disdain and shame. These people walk in shame. And I know this because they consider, it's the same story, because I lived in a certain neighborhood for 2.5 years in Brooklyn, and I know that these younger people, the people in their 20s and 30s, who grew up froom, and they still are froom, they look at their parents and their grandparents as these archaic, just, I guess you can call them passé people who don't know anything. You can't blame them for their racism and their misogyny and their ignorance and stupidity, supposedly. And there's just this shame, right? And it's so sad. And honestly, part of it can be classified as, or it could be classified as a form of lack of kivra b'eim, a form of lack of respecting the wisdom of your parents and your grandparents, because these people have been through it. They know much more than you. My friends, I'm talking to you right now, the people that I mentioned. If you're watching this, these people know much more than you. Your grandparents, the ones who came from Russia, escaped, tyrants and communism, they know so much more than you. They know so much more than your professor and your Ivy League school, or your political science professor, your woke, black, whatever, Antifa professor, communist professor. They know so much more. Just like my parents know so much more, who lived in a communist system in the Soviet Union, and I was born there. Granted, I left when I was 6. My parents know so much more, okay, than you will ever know. And they experienced such garbage. And for people to come and say, well, we're a different kind of Jews. My friends, do you have any flippin' idea? Do you have any flippin' idea? You notice I'm not cursing here. I could be cursing. What happened in 1939? What the Jews, just like you, were saying in 1939. Yeah, those are the archaic Jews, and those kind of Jews, and they hate us. They don't even consider us real Jews. And we're the enlightened, we're the assimilated, we're part of the fabric of society. And lo and behold, in the words of Dave Chappelle, I'll just move this glass so it doesn't go flying. What did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slap. My friends, don't let it get to the slap. Just don't let it get to the slap. I really hope it doesn't have to come to that. But I suspect that it will. Otherwise, just as always in Jewish history, the merchant of Brooklyn will not wake up from his slumber. Alright guys, talk to you soon.